Welcome once again to the Liberty Lounge podcast. I'm Johnny B, and next to me is Jared of Guns and Gadgets, Anthony, the Arms Scholar, and we are on location out in Tennessee with Lucas of T.Rex Arms. Y'all know who he is. Lucas, I want to open with this. You have experienced a lot of growth in the last few years. People know who you are, and that's really, really cool. What is a door that is open for you that you just go, pinch me, this is really awesome?
Probably a big one for me was a year ago when Tucker Carlson asked me to come on the show. And I can't remember how that happened. Someone in his studio knew me, or they followed me on some other content, or they watched my Twitch or something. And then they just ran it through the food chain and got me on his show. And I remember being there. I was driven around, didn't know where I was supposed to go, low vis location, you know, they have security and all this stuff. And then walking into the room, there he is. He's a big guy, by the way. He's like 6'3" and like 220 pounds or something. And I'm like, oh, here's Tucker. He's big. Like, all right. And then we sit down, have a nice conversation. And then we left and I was like, that just happened. So that was a highlight for me. Like that was super cool. Cause it was kind of the thing for me that was cool about it was he's not in the gun space. Like he is not a gun industry guy or anything like that. Is very, you know, he's very removed, I would say, from our traditional like gun industry stuff, but being able to take, you know, the messaging of the Second Amendment and whatnot to that mainstream space was a big deal for me. And it came from doing content and doing what I do. So that was a pretty cool one last year. And then shortly after, he was fired by Fox, probably because of me. So,
that was right before that. So, like Lucas, we're crossing it off of Fox.
Does that mean we're getting shut down today?
The demise sponsors. The demise of T.Rex Arms starts today.
Yeah.
One thing that I am heavily involved in is like trying to either support or stop legislation and coming from the evil empire of Massachusetts. Now I live here. I'm really impressed with how you and your brother are deep in the trenches, so to speak. What would you say? Because we're different age groups, but
Sure,
your younger age group needs to be involved. How would you say to somebody like who's thinking about getting involved, what would be a key way for them to actually just take that step?
So a big one, what I'm seeing with my generation, am I Gen X or Z? I don't even know. Millennial. I'm probably millennial. Technically. Yeah. So
the two old guys are the Gen X.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, I think the conversation has changed a lot, where a lot of young people, like younger than myself, they just don't trust the political system at all. And I would say rightfully so for the most part. But there is that conversation of, hey, you can do stuff at the local level. You can do stuff at the state level. I totally understand why people don't want to donate to the NRA and expect stuff at the federal level. I totally get it. There's an education piece that young people need to hear and see that, hey, you can do stuff at the local level, and here's what it looks like. And I think that's what is missing for a lot of people, is the demonstration of competence, or what does that look like? You know, you can go and meet with your sheriff. Like, you got to make some calls. You have to be committed, but you can go and sit down with the sheriff of your county if you want to do that. And a lot of people just don't think they can do that because they're an average Joe. They're a regular person. Like, you know, who am I to go and talk to the sheriff about, you know, red flag laws or something? Well, any constituent can go and do that if you're willing to call, set up an appointment, go to it, sit down with him, have that conversation. So there's a piece there of education that young people are going to need, simply because they don't trust the political system at all after 2020. Right. I mean, I have a hard time trusting a lot of it. I'm just like, am I even going to be able to do anything at the federal level? State level, I'd say yes. We've done some stuff here in Tennessee. And so that's something that I think really needs to happen, is continuously showing young people what the state level looks like and what they can do. But there is still that sort of skepticism that young people have for, like, does it matter? You know, does anything matter? There's a whole lot of that right now, which kind of sucks, you know, after COVID. But I don't know. I'm, you know, my thing is, my brother Isaac focuses on the political stuff. I focus a lot more on the cultural stuff. Yep. Politics is definitely affected by culture. So there is that I do see it being the educational component of telling people what they can do at a local level and to have hope, which they don't have for the system. I think once that has happened, then we will see a lot more young people being involved. Because I even noticed I did some stuff with, well, I'm going to be careful saying this. I didn't do anything with Turning Point, but they invited me to come out. So I went out to kind of like, you know, sniff out the organization, see what's going on. And I noticed the first time I went to their HQ, it was 80% young women. There were only like 20% dudes. And I was like, where are the men? Like, there's no dudes here. It's all, you know, these single chicks, these young women who have Instagram accounts, micro influencers. No dudes were there doing stuff. It's very few. And that was kind of disappointing to me because I was hoping for, you know, a lot more guys there that would be involved and want to be interested in politics and culture. And that just didn't happen. So there's a lot of reasons for that. But, you know, for me, it's just the education piece and showing people what can happen. And that requires demonstration. So what's happening in Massachusetts, what we're able to do in Tennessee, what people are able to do in other states, hopefully will bring hope to young people and show them how they can do something versus just going, it's all rigged. Every election's rigged. Like, we can't do anything. Yeah. You know, I'm just a video game COD player who works at 9 to 5. What can I do? Like, my life is meaningless, you know, which is what a lot of young people think. And it's sad. But
yeah. Well, to be clear, nothing that happens up in Massachusetts is going to get anybody fired up about politics.
Yeah, there are good and bad things that happen even in those states. But I wanted to kind of play off something we talked about our last podcast that we did together, and you kind of hit on it. We talked a lot about men. And culture right now around being a man. And you kind of talked about it a little bit, how there's this weird defeatism with men right now, especially these younger men coming up. What do you think is a potential solution for that? Because I see it even in some of my siblings, there is this defeatism. Like, I'm just going to throw up my hands. Society's against me. Culture's against me. You know, the economy's against me. I'm just going to give up. What do you think is the solution for that? I know it's a hard question to answer.
No, so I think again, I think the solution is, and this is one thing I want to try to do on my live show that I'm starting, is pointing out good that happens. Now, this is something that's really interesting that I've started to see. As soon as people didn't trust the media, which is like 2019, 2020 is like really when it snowballed. People don't want to trust anything anymore. Like, you can have a good thing that happens, like even T.Rex Arms, right? Like, what has happened to T.Rex Arms is a really cool story and it's amazing. And there's people that go, you know, it's fake, or it was just your parents' money, or your parents started it. You don't do anything. And like, people want to refuse to believe anything that is good. And that's just going to keep them being all defeatist. So like, my thing is, how can we find examples of good things that are happening that young people are doing? Like, there's this young guy, I can't remember his name, but I follow him on Instagram. He's focused on cleaning out the oceans, and he's like 25, and he has these ships that pick up trash. I think he's the coolest thing ever. Like, he's just collecting trash in the ocean. He's like 25 years old. And like, I think talking about people like that and showing young people that that sort of thing is happening and it is good and it is true and it's happening will show people that they don't have to just be defeatist about, because you're right. Like, there's a lot of bad stuff that's going on. The globalists have all the money. The left hates us. There's money being funded. Like, most gun like lawsuits right now are being funded by every town. They have way more money than we have. And that can definitely sort of weigh down on us where we don't feel like we can do anything. But at the same time, there is a lot of good that is happening with firearms legislation, with small businesses, with, you know, there's the guy who was just pardoned down in Texas. Like, there is stuff that is happening that is good. And I think highlighting the good stuff, which I know it's hard for content creators because it is so much easier to just talk about drama and bad crap, because that's fun. Like, people like that. They'd rather watch that than hear like, oh, this heartwarming story about this firefighter who saved a cat. Like, nobody wants to read about that, you know? Well, I might, because I like cats, but nobody's going to read that. They want to go read about this influencer who doesn't like this influencer and why. Like, that's what they want to watch. But so I really think it's going to just require finding those hopeful, good stories and pushing them out there. And eventually certain ones will inspire certain young people to see it and go, I want to do that or something like that. And then they'll stop being defeatist. But that's tough. I mean, I think about it all the time. Like, how do we get young people interested in work, seeing that work is cool, work is noble, whether they're starting their own business or they're working for someone else, you know, how can they succeed at that and have hope for the future and not just all this despair? It's tough, but it's on them. I mean, if they want to wake up every morning and be disappointed and sad, well, you know, sucky for them and sucks for them. That's going to be a pitiful life to live. And there's only so much I can do to make it better for them, but because it is on them, like, they're going to have to make that decision themselves.
I think it's interesting because you probably face this a lot with the type of content you make in the business you have. I'm sure you have a lot of young guys reach out to you like, I want to work for T.Rex Arms, but they think that they're going to be you. It's going to be this. Shooting. Exactly. But they don't realize that probably working for T.Rex Arms would be what we just saw behind the scenes. A lot of people working, make, you know, hard actual manual labor.
Oh yeah.
Well, I want to give you a shout out on that because we're all business owners. And you are employing people, which is phenomenal. Give a quick rundown. I know the story's long, but what your team has accomplished from start to where we are today. You know, tell some things that you faced to help you make that decision and what keeps you driving forward. Because as business owners, there are, you know, we have good days and bad days. And we have to worry about payroll and the future and continued growth. what are some things that you can help the young folks watching who might be like, I hate everything, or there's no hope.
Yeah.
I mean, small business is the way to fix America.
It is. It absolutely is. So a big one is, what I would tell people is you definitely want to work with people you enjoy being around. Yeah. Like that's a huge one. And there's this fine line of, does that mean you should hire your friends or not? This is the traditional business advice is don't hire your friends.
That really makes me want to start a podcast with guys that I like.
My friends.
One day I'm going to dream. Oh no. I have a dream.
Yeah. So, it's a fine line. It's just like, you want to come to work every day and work with people you like, but then there's also that tension of what happens when one of them messes up, or I mess up and they're going to see my deficiencies, or I'm their boss. Like that's a tough one. Like if you're the boss of your friend you just hired, like and I've had a lot of failures in that area where I did not manage relationships well. And I would say they also did not manage the relationship very well. So it's a two-way street. That's a tough one for people. And unfortunately there is not like a formula you can follow for like hire your friend if X, Y, Z, and it will work out.
Right.
It's a trial by like error situation where if you have a friend and you can both respect each other and he knows he's working for you and you know you are responsible for him, paying him and taking care of him or whatever, it can work really well. But that does require a high degree of trust and that you both know each other and you're able to do that. You're able to respect him as an employee. He's able to respect you as an employer. And that's going to vary person to person. But I would say you still want to find people that you enjoy working with, because the second you start hiring people, and I've had this where I've had certain meetings that I've needed to come into work for, and I don't want to say I dreaded, maybe it's the right word, where I dreaded coming into work because I knew it was just going to be a bunch of disagreement and debating and like kind of fighting over something. And it wasn't man, I can't wait to go there and we're going to problem solve this big thing that's happening. It's going to be super fun because we all gel really well together. There's been times where it's been very hard to come into work, and that's because of personnel, like people, personalities, lack of respect, lack of, expectations that were properly set up ahead of time. So it can be very enjoyable when you have the right team, when you have the right people. And if you're able to set that up, that's what's going to make the job fun. Even when you're doing a task as boring as I've got to do budget stuff with my marketing director. We were supposed to do that today and we were too busy. We've got to sit down and reconcile the budget for the last quarter and the next quarter. Normally the most boring job ever. We're going to have fun doing it because we're going to be talking about what can we sell or get rid of to fund these things? What can we do over here instead? And it's going to be a fun process. If I were to have to do it with someone else though, it could suck. It could be really bad. So, there's a camaraderie that you can get. And this is something I've seen with young people, especially young people who didn't join the military. They see the camaraderie military guys have, or even in law enforcement, and they want it.
Yeah.
They want that manly friendship thing, or that, we're bros or whatever. And as a civilian, we typically don't have that. Like we don't have the same kind of friendship that some of the military guys have when they get to a unit and they're working together all the time. In business, in a small business organization or in a business organization, you can start to have some of that, and that camaraderie of a crisis is happening. You've got your three, people you work really good with, and you come in and you're like, hey, sales are down. This thing just happened. This company is alleging this thing. A lawsuit just kicked off. How are we going to fight this thing? How are we going to do it? And that's fun. Like you're not going to get that anywhere else besides joining the military or being in a law enforcement agency, responding to some sort of call. So if a young person is watching this or listening to this and you want that camaraderie, you want that you want to be on a team, look for a job that allows you to be in that environment, or start a company where eventually you can have that sort of environment, and look for people that you want to work with every day, not necessarily just the person who has the best, diploma or has the best skill set for that job. Like for us, we hire for culture fit way more than skills. Like I don't care if someone has we've never hired anyone just because they had the right degree. Like we could care less. That's not what we want. We want people we enjoy working with every day, who will also enjoy working with everyone we already have here, and are a good culture fit, and also have the ambition to work hard, and then usually have some skills to match, but most skills can be taught, so we don't really care. And then we bring those people in and we have fun. We enjoy working every day, coming in. We stay late. A lot of people stay late because we're just talking about some theological thing or some industry thing going on or whatever. And then it's like 6:30 and we're like, oh, we should probably go home. And then we go home.
All right, you're busy. Your whole team is busy.
Oh, yeah.
You are an entrepreneur. You're an innovator. You're not just a guy running around on video games and being cool. How are you managing your day-to-day stuff? Because we've been having conversations this week during our time in Nashville, like what it means to be a man and what it means to live a life where we provide for our families, but also have a freaking ball doing what we do. And all of these things we're trying to balance. And we're in a day and age where people eat processed food and are miserable, and it's hard to live healthy in 2024 up here.
Yep.
And in our bodies
100%.
and run all these businesses. And a few minutes ago off camera, we were talking, I was thinking about this and thinking about that. You've got more ideas cooking. How do you manage this day to day?
I don't. No, ask me that in 5 years. So I have tried, I have tried every single, maybe not every single, that's probably a hyperbole. I have tried a lot of different methods of scheduling and processes and stuff. I've done the notebook thing where I write each day out, I write each thing and I update it as I go. And the next week I flip a page, all that. The big one for me is just, I have a one calendar app. That is it. I don't mix calendars. I just got one. It's got all my personal stuff on it. It's got all my work stuff. I will even drop in items I need to think about. So I'll have a scheduled meeting and then I'll have a block of time. And this is all 5-minute increments. And I'll just drop in there, be thinking about such and such. It's not a meeting. It's not a set work thing I have to do, but it's think about a thing this date, or I'll drag it into the evening, think about this thing, and I'll run my calendar about 6 weeks, 8 weeks out. And it's packed to 5-minute increments. I schedule when I drive. I schedule if I have to do something while I'm driving, and I have it all in one place. Because the second I start to move because a lot of people do this, they have personal and they have work. As soon as you start to do that, it's very easy to start scheduling over things, and it's mentally overwhelming. I get overwhelmed. And one thing I do when I start to get overwhelmed, because I have all these thought projects going on, either it's a new business silo or something, and then I just have the regular marketing video stuff I have to do. I'll sit down and I will, on a single piece of paper, write everything out that I can think of right then, that it's just that I'm overwhelmed on, and I can see it all in one spot. And then I go, okay, I see it all. I can actually put it on paper. That means I'm not losing complete control, some control, but not complete control. And then I move on and I try to address it the next day. But a lot of it's triaging. I mean, if I've got, I've got so much time here at work and then so much time at home and then all the other appointments that I have to pick and choose. I've got to cancel certain things. I've got, there's some people that want to come out and visit, and I say, no, that's not going to work. You guys are cool. So it's let's do it. But that was also a month out or something like that. It was, hey, and we looked in the calendar. Where do we have a slot for 4 or 5 hours? It's right here. Boom. We've got it.
Are you thriving? Because I've watched you from afar for, we all have for a long time. It seems like there's more and there's more and there's more. Do you get better at delegating and better at figuring out what's important? Are you thriving? Is it getting harder or is it getting easier?
Easier. Oh yeah. It's a lot easier. It's with time and experience, it does get easier. The thing that, unfortunately, there is, I have a couple things that I think I'm naturally good at, and I have to be careful with that, because a lot of people use that as a cop-out. They go, oh, you're naturally good at shooting. It's no, I had to I had to work hard to get good at shooting. There are some things I'm naturally good at, and one is not caring about stuff. So in my process of elimination, triage, if there's something that I really is not important, I cast it. I don't care. I don't even think about it. And I only think about the high level stuff that I need to. Honing that took a lot of time, because what I thought was important, say 5 or 6 years ago, is not what I think is important now. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty good at that in meetings and discussions and stuff. But I would say I'm definitely a lot better than I used to be. I used to spend too much time doing some stuff that I just frankly should not have. I still spend too much time in the armory building out guns and kit and stuff that I shouldn't do.
I understand.
I spent a lot of time in here last week, yes. but that is also one of the competitive advantages of T.Rex is I'm an end user who's also driving certain decisions in the company, and I'm still using the stuff. So the second I stop doing that, what's that going to mean for the business? And so it is hard. One thing, and I have not talked about this on a podcast, so this will be a first. 3 years ago, I went and got all my hormone levels checked, because my wife was like, hey, you run ragged, you should probably get checked. So did the blood, did all that, went in. My testosterone levels were 100. I
just did that.
And you're supposed to be 900 or whatever. And she was like, what do you do? because I was like 27, 26. And I was like, well, I'm super stressed. I sleep 5 hours. This is what I eat. I do a lot of shooting and then I travel constantly. And she was just like, yeah, so this is not normal for someone your age. We need to get your levels back up. Okay, and I was sluggish. Like I was working so hard, but throughout the day I felt like off. It was about 2 years of this. So I got it back up to 900 and that helped a lot. Like that was huge. So I know that's like a big discussion that a lot of people have, as far as, and that's the food we eat, the processed nasty food. It's how stressed people are if they're working 2 jobs because the economy sucks right now.
Plastics in our body.
Plastics.
Yep.
So like even if you're a young person and you're like, I won't get my health checked till I'm like 40s or whatever, you might want to get it checked even if you're like 25 and see, because you might have one thing that's off. And if you fix that, and I'm still kind of resistant to some health stuff because my wife's like, oh, you should check this. And I'm like, I'm a guy. Like, I'll be okay. But now it's like, no, I actually should go and get checked and make sure everything's all right. And yeah, starting to work out, getting my T levels up. Like, yeah, that helped with the job. That just helped with work, like in general. So I would highly recommend young people who do feel like they're running ragged or they're overwhelmed. It could just be some health deficiencies and you're putting it at the back of your mind because you're like, I'm a man, I'm tough. And it's like, yeah, some of that you don't have control over potentially depending on the food you're eating. Right. And you're messed up because of stuff you didn't know about. And now you have to go and fix it.
That's super important. So again, also something I haven't talked about on the podcast or anything. So similar situation, was having a lot of issues, went in with a clinic and just did a comprehensive blood panel.
Yep.
One of the things they found is I had iron levels that were pretty much toxic in my blood and they did not know why. Ended up finding out I have a genetic disorder that causes liver damage. And if it's not treated, essentially you could die. And my dad also died of liver damage. And we think that was why, and it just went unchecked. It was a genetic thing that you wouldn't have gotten checked otherwise. So echoing what you say, it doesn't really matter like testosterone, whatever. You probably should do at least a baseline if you're younger, just to know where you're at.
You should be visiting your doctor anyway to get it regular. But some of these tests,
we don't go to the doctor.
But some of these tests you have to specifically ask for.
Exactly.
Like when I had my T levels checked, my doctor's like, "Why?" I'm like, dude, I'm tired once I wake up. Like, and it was way off too.
Yeah, it's hard to be a dude because we're going to fix it ourselves. And we've been talking about independence last night and about just doing things ourselves as dudes in 2024. It's hard. And I think it's hard to be a Christian in 2024. Like it's a really weird time, like downtown Johnson City, stepping over homeless people to get to my job. And it's just this weird duality. And I also feel the same weird duality. Like I'm surrounded by plastics. And I just finished a book called Estrogeneration about men putting so much plastic in their body. And it's a challenge in 2024, the things we're getting from all sides, not just our schedules or success, or just age. I turned 50 a few weeks ago, and it's not just the degradation of my soul and my body. It's also, it's coming. I feel like it's coming from every single direction. Let's talk about guns. This audience loves guns.
Cares. Let's get to this.
I'm going to rub some gunpowder. Rub gunpowder on it. It'll go away. Our audience loves guns. They really do. And it's one of those things, we name them by name. Who's killing it right now? You're going to leave people out. But who's right now? What brands are actually in the firearms world? You're just like, all right, they're doing some things.
They all suck.
So the brand that keeps getting talked about is PSA, obviously. And they're doing cool stuff. We recently got back from a trip. We went down there and it's my first time going down. So I got to get the whole tour. Cameron gave us the tour and then I got to meet the owners, which is fun. The coolest thing they're doing. So I have lots of opinions about their guns. And some good, some not so good. Some that I would like to be better. They are good at making stuff. I heard something. I'm going to repeat what someone else said. This is not from me, although I kind of agree with it. They're good at making stuff. They're not always the best at putting it together. And I think that's a somewhat good assessment. And like some guns they'll make work fine. I've got some PSAs. They're fine. They're not a problem. I've shot a couple thousand rounds through them, a few thousand rounds. They're still chugging along. No problems. It will probably be fine. I can probably get it to 10K before I got to do anything wild. Right. And for a $400 gun, I don't expect Knight's armament performance. Like that's a discussion that at some point people need to have. What do you expect out of a $400 or $500 AR? Well, probably not what you expect out of an $1,800 or $2,000 AR. Right. Like at some point. Now, what is that? That people can debate that. But the coolest thing PSA is doing, and I ideologically we line up very much, is they're setting up and they have a primer plant This is huge because there's only 2 primer plants here in the U.S. One is CCI and one is I can't remember who the other one is. They're essentially bought up by the government whenever the government has to purchase a lot of ammo for a war that's happening, and civilians get the leftovers. So when ammo prices go up, a lot of that's due to primers not being available and supply and demand being an issue. Right. So in 2020, the owners at PSA said, hey, we need to make a civilian primer plant that we don't provide to the government. We don't provide to law enforcement. Those are primers that civilians can get, the ammo companies can make ammo with, and it's available at all times. And that's what they're creating. And it's a lot of money. We walked in there, we looked at it, we talked to some of the chemists. Like, it's a legit process. And I kind of look at it as so removed from what traditional gun companies do. Like, I see that as just a very cool thing. It's not just gun assembly. Like, no, they're making raw, like, material. Right. They're making C4 basically, and then spreading it out into little primer cups that people can then buy. So, and they're doing that for a resiliency standpoint for civilians, which I think is awesome. Yeah. So major props to PSA, regardless of what anyone thinks about PSA. They're doing stuff that the big boys aren't doing. And I think that's cool. Would I like if their QC could go up for some of their guns? Yes, I would. And I'm sure with time it will, because they've got some good folks over there. It's just every once in a while. We did a test recently and the PSA pistol had the most problems. It's also the cheapest of all the pistols there. So there's also that, like, what should be expecting a $300 gun compared to a $500 Glock. And that's kind of a tough one. I'm sure you guys have all sorts of opinions.
Yeah.
But
now, all right, who's got it wrong now?
Who's got it wrong? Dang.
Top of your mind.
I don't follow gun companies that much anymore. Which
We're sitting in an arm of gun companies. You know, we are surrounded by safes.
What's your opinion on Bear Creek Arsenal?
Honestly, that's just why I don't know a lot about them.
I didn't know about them.
I've never shot their guns. I have no idea. Well, it depends on what you're talking about. Like, are we talking branding? Are we talking product value?
I think both are very valid, because I think you were hitting on a couple things. We're talking about there's quality of guns and what they're actually, providing to the end user. And then there's also gun culture, which I know you're big.
I care a lot more about that.
Gun culture and serving the civilian market and a lot of gun companies. And we've said this a lot on the podcast. Just because someone sells guns, makes guns, or shoots guns does not mean they're pro Second Amendment or even really interested in serving civilians.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of times these companies are propped up, and we've talked in behind the scenes a lot about companies that are propped up by the government.
I got a humdinger. All right. So gun culture is a big one. That's the one I care more about. That's when I say, like, I don't know what's going on with guns. Like, I shoot the guns. I can't always tell you exactly like what they're doing, because I don't care. I shoot them. Sig is an interesting company because I saw someone say it online recently, and I think it's pretty good. They are a marketing company that happens to sell guns, which to the civilian market, I would agree with. Now, they are pushing government contract stuff and big machine guns and crazy stuff like cool. That statement alone, though, is not completely untrue. And I've heard another rumor about Sig, and this, I would not be surprised if this were the case, but this is allegedly a rumor. The MCX program, the Sig LT program, the guns that get sold to civilians are the blems that weren't good enough for the military.
Interesting.
Would not surprise me in the least. But it's that kind of sort of attitude from a company like Sig that makes me go, man, is a company like Sig, like, are they really that interested in serving the American population? Or is this just a money thing? Because they are like a $1 billion company with these $500 million government contracts. Right. Civilian sales are possibly, I don't want to say they're a drop in the bucket, because civilian sales are a lot higher than most people realize.
They're not as valuable to them as they used to be.
Or they're not as valuable because they have these huge contracts. And so Sig is one of those companies where it's like, man, on some days I really like certain products that they make, and other days I'm like, what the heck is going on over there? They're just so big that there's probably departments that don't talk to departments, and some departments are ideologically on board with what everyone's doing, and then other ones are just caring about like a contract, or they don't really care about civilians because they're making this thing. And Sig's kind of a weird one. And then some of their marketing, who they blast guns out to for content and stuff, and which, I mean, everyone does that. I don't really care so much, but Sig's just an interesting one to kind of break apart because they're the biggest and they do everything.
If you were CEO for one day at Sig, what's one change you'd make?
I would pull the 320. I mean, no, I'd pull for investigation because it's not necessarily. And this is where I'm not a gunsmith, so I don't know. It's possible that the gun is not a problem. It's like a manufacturing process or a part process. I've heard that some of the parts they get are from India. Then they have American-made parts that get sent to people for warranty. So are the Indian parts failing, and does that just need to be fixed and then it's fine? I don't know. But it could be an easy fix. But it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to mean pulling the gun. It's going to mean people not trusting it. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. Is the Army going to pull the contract if they do something for the civilian side while not doing something for the military? Right. Probably. So it's hard. I say it very easily from my seat. It'd be the 320, but I mean, that's a huge decision too.
That would also be catastrophic for you guys' business though, because you guys sell plenty of, you guys sell plenty of holsters.
And that's something we've talked about is, hey, at what point does a handgun, because there's handguns we don't make holsters for. And some of it is, it's not from, like, I haven't tested Tauruses. So I can't say from my seat Tauruses suck because I haven't shot them enough to be able to say that. Like, I could just go off of other people's experience. We don't make holsters for Tauruses because we just believe they may not be the best value for people and a pistol we want to recommend. But I also know we need to go and test that. But there is that concept that, hey, if a pistol's not good enough or it's too dangerous, we should not support it. We're not just supporting guns because it's a product we sell. And I brought up, I want to say it was like 4 or 5 months ago in a meeting, I just said, hey, is the 320 problem big enough that we need to stop supporting it? And people were like, that's a lot. I mean, and we're talking 7 figures of sales if us dropping it. And I said, no, but for real, like, I don't want like a gun to go off in a holster. And I know we're getting blamed immediately.
100%.
This thing's not getting blamed. We're getting blamed for the gun going off in the holster. But there's also just that component of, is it a product that ideologically we should support if it's not getting proper support from SIG? And the problem with that discussion is the data is very hard to get. It's hard to know, is it all 320s or is it only certain ones? Because if it's only certain ones, well, I still want to outfit the good SIGs for the people that like the SIG and so they can have a good product. So it's very convoluted and very difficult. And I wish SIG as a company could sort of, like, I wish they could handle it because it's their product versus us having to handle it on our end. Right. So that's still a discussion that we're having. But yeah, SIG is definitely, like, you have PSA on one hand, this giant company that's crushing it for civilians. You have SIG, this giant company crushing it with the government. And there's civilians in the middle who are buying from both. And so those are the two companies I'm constantly thinking about. Everyone else just kind of falls into place and is kind of doing their thing. But yeah, SIG's a tough one.
Let's talk about T.Rex Arms for a minute. We had a blast today for touring and seeing what you've got going on. We got to see a little bit about what might be coming in the future. A lot of fun to see this. I want to bifurcate what you do a little bit, even though it's difficult to move to two camps. On one hand, you're creating gear and you're selling it. And that's a business within itself. And God bless the American dream. I love it. But on the other hand, in your life and with your media, you're teaching kids how to shoot. There's guys I've seen on the range firsthand, be watching somebody. I'm like, they're doing a Lucas. Like they are. And it's cool. It's awesome.
You can tell by the clothes.
But you're also equipping people with, heaven forbid, the worst happens. The crap hits the fan, maybe on an individual level in your driveway with a knucklehead neighbor, or maybe on a larger scale, heaven forbid. How aware are you? Business, got it. I understand that. How aware are you, on the other hand, that you're training people to protect their families and that there is a reason that this soft gear or these holsters or the skills that you're working with young people and ancient guys like Gen X here, how aware are you that what you're teaching has an effect on the future of their safety?
Very. We get messages. I don't want to say all the time. We get customer feedback, and I'll get messages here and there. There's a young guy that I was following for a while. He was in a shooting, I think it was like a year and a half ago, and he was house arrest, all that stuff. But he got tackled by a coworker, and who was this big guy beating his head into the concrete. And he ended up drawing from his sidecar from close retention, 5 rounds, kills the guy. And then the prosecutor wants to get him on murder because, he used a gun when the guy didn't have a weapon. Disparity of force obviously is the discussion there. And so I get messages from guys like this who are involved in shootings, and I've had messages from law enforcement guys and from civilians saying, hey, because of this video content that I saw a few years ago, I believe it helped in saving my life through the situation. Like the weirdest one I remember, and this one was kind of odd. I did a video where GoPro, so POV, cool. Had a car window, and I was thinking about this the other day. I smashed the window, I raked it out like you're trying to pull a suspect out, and this was like 6 years ago. And I remember shortly after, like 2 years later, an officer wrote to me and said, hey, I recently had this call. Here's what happened on it. I remembered your video with the window thing, and I had to do that to extract the person or deal with the situation. So thank you. And I remember seeing that and being like, I'm not an extrication expert. I just smashed the window with my gun. I did an okay job in getting all the glass out. But so we get little stuff like that here and there from guys. We get a lot of stuff from people who we ship medical gear to them. And then they use it that day. There's a lot of that where we'll send them a medical kit and they're like, hey, fluke incident. I got my package with my little ITRK like medical kit. I used it on a car accident on my way home. And then I'm like, oh, well, if we hadn't shipped it that fast to that person, would it have turned out differently? You know, I don't know. So, yes, it is cool to see that. And that's actually, you know, I get a lot of praise online from people, and in person. I'll get recognized when I go out. The thing that I appreciate hearing the most, and even more so than like seeing people using our gear, like SF units and stuff, that's always fun. What I appreciate the most is when someone says, hey, your content is why I train. That is the feedback I value the most, more than someone coming up saying, oh, you're the guy on YouTube. Oh, you're like, yo, I can't believe you're really cool. It's like, hey, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I like that. But when someone says you're the reason I train, or I carry a gun, why I have equipment now, I'm like, mission accomplished. That's what I'm here to do. That's what I'm trying to do with T.Rex.
Lucas, I need to be honest with you. You are, when I watch you train, you're one of the reasons I want to give up.
Oh, well,
I want training to be done. I'm like, why? Why even try to change a mag? I remember my son during 4 or 5 years ago when a lot of things you were doing were ramping up. My son was in that early high school, mid high school, and then COVID hit, and they're doing nothing. They're vampires sitting watching media. And my son never really paid much attention to, dad doing YouTube stuff. And I'm walking through the house one day. We never talked to YouTube. And he goes, Dad? I was like, yes, lower voiced son. Do you know Lucas? And I was like, oh, here we go.
I make fun of him.
I make memes about it.
I celebrate you, Lucas Botkin. I think it's funny to say that, but you see that and you're like, why would I ever change another magazine? I mean, you guys got to agree, like, just give up. Like, there's no reason to ever shoot again. So thanks for nothing.
Oh, okay. I will say, so what is fun, so I have a series right now and I need to film, I think it's part 5, how to shoot parts 1 through 10 parts. So it should be done this year. We'll see. What's fascinating is, so I am good at shooting. It is true. I am. But what is interesting is in the process of training different people along the way, like law enforcement, military guys, civilians, there are ways of getting people like expedited in the process of how to shoot better. And it's not as hard or takes as long as a lot of people think. The reason so many people don't get better very fast is they don't know how to train. They're not very purposeful. They just emulate some video they see on YouTube, and that's not always the correct thing to do. And so I actually believe, and there's a bunch of instructors I talk to, like we're all trying to figure out how can we revolutionize training so someone can be like, let's say 80% of what I can do right now, I can get there in 3 months. And like, there is a way to do that, like very purposeful training, not a whole lot of rounds. If you want it, if you're interested and you're motivated, it doesn't take 10 years, which is what I've spent, and 500,000 rounds, which is a lot of money. Like you don't have to do that to get good at shooting. Like even 80% of the way there. Like I know most people aren't going to be as good at shooting as I am, but they can get 80-70% of the way there and be a very capable citizen. Still be able to draw from the holster, in around a second, be able to shoot, 5 rounds with a carbine at 50 meters in under 4 seconds. Nothing crazy, like just solid, competent weapons handling. So that's something I'm trying to work on and provide is, hey, like you don't need all this money to be really good. Like you can do it for not a lot of money. You can get good. You're not going to be a grandmaster. You're not going to be the best shooter in the world. I'm not going to be the best shooter in the world. I'm not even that interested in pursuing that because that would take so much time and effort and money. And I'm okay with where I'm at. I want to get better, but I'm not going to be that good. So it's not as hard as you think.
I have trained with the three of us have trained shoulder to shoulder. We've traveled, we've spent money, we've bled together, we've sweated together, and like we work at it. Yeah. But there is still something to be said for it's fun to watch it on social media, and it is super entertaining. We were talking yesterday how I think the days of the gun tuber are done. The individual gun tuber sitting at his house in his garage. You and a couple other guys pushed forward that everything now is now processed and there's a production team. You guys, I remember there was one like 3 or 4 years ago where you shockingly ran through the range, but dipped down and shot underneath a vehicle on a rainy day and the camera went with you. It's maybe 5 years ago. And I went, holy smokes, that's a shot. How aware are you of that? Of that, you guys have pushed to where other people are now trying to have this cinematic moments in the range because it's freaking awesome to watch.
Oh yeah, I'd say very aware. What made me aware of it is I was when I got asked to work on Call of Duty, the good one, 2019, not that gay stuff now, but the good one. I don't play it anymore. I can't. It's too gay. But
Super violent. You don't like to kill.
No. I'm good. Watch the hackers. Yeah. So I go to the studio. So I talk to them on the phone, and that's also a surreal moment for me because I grew up playing COD. I'm doing this because of COD, like Modern Warfare 2, the original, 2019, 2009, the good one, and COD 4. So I'm on the phone with them. I fly out for my initial, and I walk in and I see my pictures of my kit, which I was very deliberate about as character art that they have. They photoshopped other people's heads on for the characters for the game. So I'm like, that's my kit. That's me. That's my skinny little legs. And they put that jacked dude's head on top. Looked hilarious. I'm like, all right. And then they had for the multiplayer, like the menu screen for the play test was a clip from our YouTube video for the night vision one. And I was like, oh, they're using our visuals for their like play test system. And they had like 50 PlayStations all lined up, or Xboxes. I can't remember which they were using. I think both. And it was just all on all of them. And I wanted to film, but I was also terrified because I was under like 10 different NDAs. So I didn't take any footage while I was there. But I was just like, if these guys are willing to use our footage because they like the look, they like the vibe, they like the appeal of it, then yeah, this is going to work like everywhere. And it already was. But I actually noticed more recently, I'd say in the last year, looking at YouTube, looking at gun channels. Yeah, everyone's filming 24 frames a second. Everyone's running some sort of Sony with a gimbal. Everyone's color grading, thank goodness, instead of just S-Log raw. Everyone's using music, sometimes the same music. Like, it is now a thing that everyone's doing, which I think is great. It does make the space more competitive because you can find a dude out there shooting. He may not show his hits. Most don't, but he will be shooting fast. And I hope he's hitting the target, maybe, with the music and the cinematography, 24 frames, a second and stuff. And I do think it was large in part to the stuff we were doing. And then I would also say once Garantham in I want to say it was 17, when he started doing more stuff, outside of his like black background old videos, the two of us kind of hitting that sort of content, I think just kind of fired it up, and now everyone's doing it, which I think is great.
What I think is interesting about you guys is you don't just do it for YouTube content. When you guys released your AC1, you had this whole cinematic video you made around the AC1, the product that you guys are also making, then releasing to. You see any other companies do that? Because there's this very interesting disconnect with gun companies where some of them are still very much in the old fuddy marketing realm. And then you have someone like you and your company who has this whole cinematic Narcos theme for your AC1 release. Yeah. What do you see there?
There's a couple of companies doing it and they're taking it further in some ways. Commando Store, he does themed launches around, like, they'll get a bunch of Russian merch in, so they'll do like a Russian theme, thing. And we don't do so much of that as much anymore. I used to really want to do stuff like that. I kind of don't want to do it as much anymore. I just want to kind of keep it like, I don't want to say more professional, but more on brand with what we're doing. But there are a few companies that are starting to do that, sort of play into themes. For like hype drops and stuff, merch drops. And it definitely works because it makes people stop and watch. Like, I watched this video. He had like a BTR, a Russian BTR, that he's driving around to McDonald's and around town, and they're all wearing the garb that they're going to sell. And I was like, this is interesting to watch, and it's different. Like, not everyone is going and doing this. And I sent him a DM and said, like, hey, that's kind of cool. Like, would T-Rex Arms do that? No, we would not do that. But I like that someone else is doing it, and how they're doing it, I think, is pretty cool. But what a lot of companies are still doing, I would say, is they're seeing the bar get raised for quality, and they're just going, hey, our annual catalog shoot that we're taking photos for, we need to add a video component in 24 frames a second, it's all cinematic, but they do it once a year. So, and they're not making like educational content. It's just like B-roll, like vibes, like cool stuff. So I'm seeing companies do that, but it's still not, hey, we need an internal media team who's producing content every week, who's talking about stuff. EOTech just started. They have a guy now that's doing that. There's a couple people. We actually talked to a large company about, this was 2 years ago, about doing larger, like productions, like hiring people outside the company and doing these big, like, I don't want to say like short films, but bigger stuff. And they said, oh, we're getting away from that. We want to do what you're doing. Like, we want to do like single camera, like shaky cam, single person on camera talking about stuff. Like, we're moving in that direction. We want to be fast and agile. The big, $100,000 video shoots, those don't net us anything. And we were starting to go down that road of, should we do that? And they were just like, no, we do it. It's not working. We're going to do what you guys are doing. And we were like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And it is still high quality. It's just not, it's not these massively planned productions with cranes and just like crazy stuff. Cause you don't generally get a lot out of that.
Yeah.
Little stuff more regularly, and being accessible to your audience is way more effective than a huge catalog video shoot like people are doing.
So who do you watch? Like if you sit down and you're watching YouTube, who do you still watch?
So I don't watch gun content because I can't stand it. I watch, my marketing director handles content and what's going on. I follow Instagram and Twitter to know what's going on.
Yep.
If a video happens, like a shout out to Brandon Herrera, actually, I watched this AK-50 video. That was cool. Mm-hmm. Here's how I watch it though. I click my mouse to the beginning. I see what he talks about for 10 seconds. I click it in the middle. I click it to somewhere towards the end, and I watch the gun being fired, and I'm done. So and I watched it in like 15 seconds. Yeah, I sped it up. Yeah, exactly. That's how I consume content. Yeah. That's how I consume most content, and that's about how much time I have. I'm just like, what's someone doing? What does it look like? Yeah, what's the overall message? Okay, I'm out. I'm done. Yeah. That's about all I can do. Same for a lot of Grand Thumbs videos, kind of the same. I'm like, oh, he just did a video on this gun. What's the vibe he's doing right now? Who's in his video? Who's he working with? Okay, I'm out. Who's, so-and-so. So I don't really consume. I definitely don't consume gun content anymore. Yeah. I check on it to see like what's going on. But I consume like movie trailers, for, vibes and stuff. Pro StarCraft 2 gaming, I like that. That's how I go to bed sometimes.
Speaking of movies, I am a huge movie guy. I teach a movie class, and I love guns in movies. I mean, it drives me awesome. I mean, it's one thing that just drives me. Name a movie where they sort of get it right other than Heat. Heat is the easy answer. Heat's pretty awesome. Where's a movie that, it's still Hollywood, that you see something like, okay, that was pretty cool?
The only one, I shouldn't use this one because it's been turned into a meme. Blood Diamond was really good for weapons. I've heard Leonardo DiCaprio is actually one of the better actors when it comes to weapons handling, just his own training on the side and just carrying it over movie to movie. That one's always one where I'll see like clips and be like, yep, looks great. Solid. Nothing to judge. Like there's no whatever. It's like, I have a hard time watching a movie and not seeing, same for all of us, seeing something and being like, God, like season 1 of 24 or something stupid. But no, Blood Diamonds, that's an easy one. Like Heat, I would kind of put it in that same category. It's solid weapons handling. The movies that are the weirdest though, where it's like kind of cool and kind of not, are Christopher Nolan's movies. He doesn't know how to do action. Like it's really interesting. He doesn't know how to do shootings, I should say. You'll watch like the beginning of Tenet, the gunshots are super loud on purpose to feel disjointed. That was definitely an artistic thing, but like how people get shot and like how many times dudes shoot and just how it works. Like he doesn't know anything about guns when he's setting up these movies. And but it's still interesting because it feels real because it's a good movie. It's a good production. But you watch the action and you're like, this is crap. Like this is crap shooting.
Christopher Nolan doesn't know anything about flames or how to personally do CGI. He hires these guys in. I think a lot of times they're just lazy. Sicario had some good moments. Yes. There were some moments in that, and some of the gear they had on had some good moments. Pretty cool. Yeah. But I think it's less that Christopher Nolan doesn't know guns. I mean, he's a film director. What's he going to know? It's that they're not hiring in the right people. Have you had opportunities to move into those arenas? Have you had opportunities? You were smiling, please. For the
So I had. So that's actually something I would love to do, but more on the prop side. I would actually prefer to be on the prop side than and I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago. Just like, man, should I reach out to one of these prop houses and just like volunteer my time? I'll go out for free. I'll go hang out for a week and build, paint, mess up guns. Like I know how they need to be set up. I got asked, John Wick 2 was in I think it was 2. I want to say it was 2, or maybe it was 3. I can't remember. I got a message by some of the stunt crew who follow me. I follow them. Like, they're cool. They actually messaged me and said, hey, would you talk to our boss? We're looking for someone to come train the villains dudes, because we need them to look a certain way. Basically, we need them to look like the profession weapons handlers and not Keanu Reeves doing center access relock, you know? So I got on the phone. We talked a little bit. The guy who was in charge of it didn't like I didn't have any certificates.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah. So I was just like, that's fine, like whatever. But he explained the project, and it was going to be coming in and training all the bad guys and the villain. I can't remember who the villain was in second or third. I can't remember how to shoot like well. And I was like, that'll be fun. Like, I'll do that. That'll be cool. Do that for like 5 days or something and get them pretty spun up. Like, I can get people spun up in 5 days. I did train the stunt crew for, I want to say it was the Avengers, or I helped train. And the interesting thing with that was it was a job down in Louisiana, because they do a bunch of production stuff down there. They were really good at mimicking, because they're stunt crew, like they're actors, right? So I told them, hold the gun this way, you're going to stand like this, and they mimicked it perfectly. And I'm just like, why can't normal gun people just want to copy? Why do they think they know more and their way is better, or some like stupid crap? Because the stunt crew, they would look at me and go, oh, okay, so you're like bringing the gun about this much in to reload and doing this. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly it. Thank you. Now let's just improve the hits downrange. But I really didn't have to work with them that much. Like, that was cool. They were just sponges. And I would assume most Hollywood actors are like that. They just want to get it right. They'll copy whoever it is. They have no ego about it. They just want to do the job well. And I'm like, why can't gun owners be like that? Like, why can't they just want to learn? But, you know, is what it is. Some do.
What did you learn from Liku, kind of playing off of this?
Yeah.
That's kind of a
well,
video
I
of
didn't
its own.
get skinned alive, and I was happy about that because I wasn't sure. So the Liku thing, that was 7 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, I already knew what was going to happen with that. Like, I already had my theory of, hey, if you're deliberate and you want it, it all comes down to, do you want it?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be good at handling weapons and you have some item that you can sort of do things with, you will be good at handling a weapon. So I already knew with him coming out, he's going to be fine. He's going to be perfectly safe. The only thing, and I knew he's not going to be able to control recoil, because he doesn't have recoil.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing he's going to have a problem with. Sure enough, he gets there. The language barrier kind of sucked, but for the most part, and it probably sucked more for him than us, because we all know what's going on, and he did not know what we were saying. But it was great. I mean, he picked up the guns. He was super receptive. I wish we could have spent one more day with him focusing on recoil management, because he was getting by. But we didn't just focus on, hey, let's just work on this one thing for a while. Like, just grip really tight. Like, here's how the sight's going to move. Like, let's just work on that. So we weren't able to do that, because we had to kind of keep it moving along, because he had like a schedule and we had an agenda to work on. But that was just a super fun project, because it surprised everyone, I think, to see that in the industry, that, hey, this kid who's never shot a gun ever is out shooting dudes and is shooting really well. And that kind of killed the whole idea of dry fire being bad or dumb, or airsoft maybe being bad or dumb. And I haven't seen anyone debate it since. Like, not really.
We have had the best time here today. A big thank you to you and all the family at T.Rex Arms. I love watching you from a distance. It has been awesome. Going to get you out of here with 2 questions. Yeah. One on the T-Rex side and one on your side. For T-Rex Arms, what's next? I've got some suspicions. We got to see some stuff today. We got to hear a few things. We were sworn to secrecy. I got to hold in my hands.
We're not going to break the NDA, but you can.
What's next for T-Rex Arms? Because I suspect, beyond even what we saw, I suspect there's some ideas out there. And then also for you personally, I saw an NBA player one time. He had reached the peak of his game. 29 is when we have the highest levels of hand-eye everything. And he's like, I've already achieved that. And he moved into jazz piano, and because it captured his attention. So for you, I mean, you're a doggone good shooter. You're a master.
Sure. Yeah.
And you may say, well, I don't have this credential. I didn't win this competition. Whatever. Like,
you're get mad about that.
You may be the best sitting here today that you'll ever be. And plus, it may not get your attention.
That is a good way of putting it.
Where are you headed down the road? So for T-Rex Arms, where are y'all headed? And then you personally, where are you headed?
So the big one right now is, so we just hit 10 years, which is awesome, because very few businesses make it past 10 years. It's like 2.something%. So we're past 10 years, but we're in a phase right now of getting more structured to get ready for the next explosion of growth, which we're hoping for and we would like. So there's a lot of processes here because we spent years of just trying to play catch up. We had the COVID craze, massive sales are coming in. We're barely struggling to keep up with everything. We're buying buildings. We're building onto the buildings to make space. And we have a little bit of breathing room right now to, hey, let's, get a leadership structure in place. That's good to go. So we have a new CEO, so I can do like other stuff, which is, I really enjoy. So he's handling operations. He's handling all of this that's going on. So we're still in that phase of like getting all of that ready and set up and structuring our meetings and our communication and everything, trying to have a business that works well, a well-oiled machine, which we talked about some earlier. And so with T.Rex, we're doing that this year. We have a lot of product that we're working on, a lot of nylon that's coming to market this year, getting that silo all spun up. Holsters, we've got a couple holster things that we're working on. Starting up dealer accounts, that's a big one because we're trying to push the brand out there in other ways. Because like, I don't want to say we've hit market saturation for like our social media or on our YouTube, but we have kind of, I don't want to say we've maxed out. A lot of people already know who we are and if they're interested in shooting and they're interested in training. But there are millions of gun owners out there who don't know they should train. They don't know they should maybe carry a gun or what that looks like. And we want to get our brand in front of them because a lot of those people will like what our brand stands for when they know who we are. Right. They just don't even know we exist. So that's a big one that we're working on right now is how do we get our brand into some other avenues that we're not normally like hitting or experienced in hitting. So dealers is one way of doing that. So that's on the T.Rex side. For me personally, I'm looking into some other business ventures to get started in and to handle at the same time as this, which is kind of wild. So I'm looking into some of that and trying to develop more as a board member, as an executive, as a businessman. Finally doing some study and some reading. I don't do study and reading. I prefer to do. So trying to catch up, trying to play catch up. But your point on capturing attention with like shooting is very well said because a lot of this is not like I've got to the top area. Let's say not the top, but I'm in the top area of shooting. If I want to improve 0.5% or like 0.25%, I have to put every weekend in 45 minutes of dry fire a day. And I'm at a point right now where it's okay. Do I do that or do I go develop, a skill set in another area like precision shooting, like long range shooting, which is what I'm doing right now? Or is it something that's not even gun related? Right. Is it offensive driving because I want to steer people off the road when the angry mobs like come out next year after the election, Right. So there's some other things like that, but I'm actually in a phase right now where I'm looking into some things to get into and talking to some people. And I had a phone call today with a company about some other opportunities. Some public speaking is always fun. Podcasts are good. I'm speaking at a business conference next month. That's really fun. Possibly lecturing at universities, talking to young people because I am really like that. That's very important to me right now is how do we get 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds interested in work, being hopeful for the future because they're the ones that are going to fix or build whatever is left of America after whatever happens, if something happens, and getting them to stop being so defeatist. I mean, it seems to be an uphill battle, but it's a battle worth fighting. Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out what that is. I don't know what it is. Is it T.Rex? Is it something else? Is it speaking at universities? Is it writing a book? Is it going on podcasts? Is it, I have no idea. I'm just trying to figure that out right now.
I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be a ride as it always is. This is the Liberty Lounge podcast. On behalf of Jared and Anthony, I'm Johnny B. Huge thank you to the folks at T.Rex Arms. Jump on the Google, type in T.Rex Arms and get yourself something awesome. Big thank you to those folks. Lucas, thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.